Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. It's a show that today focuses on workers. Today is World Labour Day, and we're going to be talking about the state of the Ghanaian worker from three perspectives. We'll speak to teachers, we'll speak to nurses, and we'll speak to the generality of organized labor. It's an interactive show. Watch, send us your comments, and share the link as well. We'll be right back with our guests. Welcome back. So, as has become our tradition on The Point of View, when it's World Labour Day, we dedicate the show to our workers. Today we'll be speaking to Angel Carbonu, who is the president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers. We'll also speak to Perpetual Ofori-Ampofo, who is the president of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. And then later on, the director of policy and research at the Trade Union Congress, Dr. Kwabena, Otoo, will also join us to talk about the state of the Ghanaian worker. Let's start with the teachers. Angel Carbonu is the president of NAGRAT. Angel, thanks for joining us on The Point of View on the day that we are marking the Ghanaian worker. Globally, we're celebrating workers. Thanks and congratulations.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to your workers at City.
Wonderful. So, what is the state of the Ghanaian teacher? Straight to the case. How happy are you as the world celebrates workers?
Well, the current state of the Ghanaian teacher is one of disenchantment, despondency, and disappointment. Because, Bernard, we work for several reasons. We work to enhance our society, we work to keep the body active, and we also work for income. But when you work for income and at the end of the day, the income that you take does not reflect on the work that you do and does not enhance your wherewithal, you gradually drown yourself into a state of despondency. And that is what the situation is. Just today, someone came to me and informed me that, look, am I aware that the CD to the dollar is around 14.15? And I said, what? What it means is that from January to now, the true value of my income is dwindled because there is a direct relationship between the value of money in this country and foreign currency. So at the end of the day, I realized that my fortunes begin to dissipate or dwindle as the days go on. And if you are working and you cannot take good care of your family, you cannot take good care of yourself, then you just become very disappointed and despondent. And that's the situation we find ourselves.
So you are looking at the income side because you said workers work for three reasons: to keep body and soul together, to get the society advancing, and also for a pay. This issue of poor pay, is it just a question of the exchange rate? Or because I know that even from COVID times, there were salary increments, there was even cost of living allowance given. There have been various attempts to beef up the pay of Ghanaian workers in general and teachers in particular. So can you elaborate more when you say that your remuneration has not caught up with the cost of living?
Yes, those increases are always behind the real and true value of our income. In fact, when we got a 30% salary increase, immediately there was a 29.6% slap on electricity bill. There was a 17% slap on water, and all other amenities went up, through the roof. So you realize that you return to negative sometimes, so you return to square one. So it is like, and today, Bernard, as I talk to you, I am in a state of worry about my future, about my pension, because in the news, the story is clear that the Smith pension scheme is in trouble, it's in shambles. Our tier 2 pension that we fought all over the years and was introduced in 2010 also is facing serious problems because government is failed to transmit regularly and timeously the deductions that are made from workers' salaries and the percentage contribution that government is supposed to make to the various funds. Those workers who tried as much as they could to buy bonds and to do investment have seen their investment and bonds shattered. One reason is government's own unfortunate intervention in the haircut and the fact that there was financial dispersion of people's institutions and all that. So at the end of the day, when you turn right, left, center, you see that the center is not holding and the situation is adversely affecting the Ghanaian.
Let's talk about the conditions of service. I think a couple of weeks ago, we heard you call on government to resume negotiations with teacher unions to address outstanding issues regarding conditions of service. What are these conditions of service and what is the state of those negotiations?
Right. The conditions of service can be put into two categories. Category one are issues that are generally described as non-financial or non-monetary issues. Things to do with the school environment, the facilities that ought to be provided for teaching and learning to take place, issues with my progression, issues with my ranking, issues with my grading. So that those are the non-financials. So when you stretch it, they do eventually have financial implications. And then those that we see as financials are the direct income earned through work that you do, some of them through extra work that you do, your participation in activities that ought to be compensated and remunerated for. So we put the condition of service into two broad categories. Well, we have made certain demands to government with regards to our conditions of service. And as I speak to you, we've not been able to arrive at a common ground and conclude negotiations. Technically, negotiations are still ongoing, but the patience of our teachers is thinning every day because they are wondering how all this while we are at the negotiation table and they are not hearing any positive outcome from the negotiation table.
Let's talk about your tier 2 pensions and the issue about the haircuts. What is the real problem? Is it that the government, without your consent, is transferring your monies elsewhere? Or is it that your pensions investments are not going to be realizing the benefit as of the time you expect? What, if you can elaborate a bit on your concern around the tier 2 pensions?
Well, let me say this on the tier 2 pensions, that the independent trustee boards are reposed with the authority or the mandate to superintend over the general performance of workers' tier 2 pensions. So they direct, approve, disapprove, or whatever the case may be, where funds are supposed to go, on what platform funds are supposed to invest, because they are also mandated to ensure that prudently investment is done so that returns on investment for workers is something appreciable. That is the job. However, when the monies don't flow from government, at the end of the month, a percentage of my salary is taken. Government also contributes a percentage, and immediately Controller and Accountant General's Department is supposed to transmit that money to the various trustee boards for investment to take place. And I said that the last time, before we raised issues, the last time there was a transmission of funds was in December 2023. So, no, sorry, the last time transmission was done was in June 2023. So this is going to adversely affect people's pensions because the investment is not been done on a huge chunk of their contributions, and they, assuming someone is retiring today, that person will retire without the benefits of this investment, and that is not good enough.
Finally, we always talk about salary increments, conditions of service, but the second part of the equation is productivity. When you look at all global rankings of labor productivity, Ghanaian workers probably around 44%. So if you look at the rankings, Singapore, Finland, the US, workers are productive close to the 90s. Our workers are around 40% from all ILO and UN reports. On World Labour Day, what is the commitment of Ghanaian teachers to increase their productivity, not sleeping on the job, making sure they actually work so that collectively our productivity, which by the way is a key factor in the economy's growth, goes up?
Well, I have never read anywhere or seen anywhere in my labor life that the workers of Ghana have ever resisted the creation of an environment that will enhance productivity. There is never any historical records that workers ever resisted any attempt by management to create a congenial atmosphere where productivity will be at its highest. On the other hand, however, I have seen governments, I have seen management renege on their responsibility to provide the ingredients that are necessary for productivity to be enhanced. So, for example, if you give me a classroom of with children and you don't give me the school environment, the teaching and learning tools, the income that will that will motivate me, and yet you expect some level of productivity. So when we talk about productivity, we need to juxtapose the talk of productivity with the talk of management responsibility to provide the ingredients that will enhance productivity. And if we realize that one side is reneged on its responsibility, then we cannot achieve the aims and objectives of productivity that will enhance the general growth of our economy. And that's how I see it. Workers in Ghana are prepared to work. Workers in Ghana are ready to work. Workers in Ghana are waiting for the provision of the ingredients that will enhance productivity.
Well, but I still think you need to make a commitment to Ghanaians. I understand what you're saying, that you are willing to work. But if you look at our overall ranking, even recently, Professor Adair was talking about the productivity of construction workers, and he spoke about how Togolese workers are more productive than Ghanaian workers. I mean, we don't just complain and say we should be paid better, and we also don't say that the condition for improved work is from the employer. We, the workers, must also take responsibility. And I think on a day like this, Ghanaian teachers ought to say that they will do better for our kids, so that they can also pass their exams better and be more productive citizens.
Bernard, I can easily just make a verbal commitment, but we need to understand the environment we find ourselves. For example, that statement by Professor Adair, you should realize that when you travel out of your comfort zone in search of greener pastures, your behavior and your attitude becomes very different. So Ghanaians who have traveled outside the shores of Ghana to Europe and America are somewhere looking for fortune. They have a different attitude. What I'm talking about is, unless it is proven that the Ghanaian worker is the Ghanaian workers' behavior is not a commitment towards productivity, we are ready. Give us the tools, give us the congenial environment, give us the resources, give us the motivation. We will give you whatever productivity you want. And look at those in the private sector, those running their own private businesses. The same blood that runs through me runs through them. How come that people work very hard in those environments? Because the private man motivates himself and motivates people around him. If you don't give your workers the microphone, you don't expect them to reach me wherever I am on their programs. So all that we are saying that, look, we are ever ready. We are waiting for the powers that be to change their attitude from frivolities onto weightier matters of our society. And let's all get committed to work for our mother Ghana.
Thank you very much, Angel Carbonu. I wish you happy Workers' Day, and let Aluta continue, as you say.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Maybe we have to find time and sit over one bottle and share ideas.
It's very important for the sake of Firestone and Medina. I appreciate that. That was Angel Carbonu, President of NAGRAT. Next to talk to us is the Director of Research and Policy at the Trade Union Congress. He's been there, I think, since I started my work, probably 16 to 20 years now. Dr. Kwabena Nyarko Otoo. And he's an economist, and he's been talking a lot about the welfare of workers from an economic perspective. And he's joined us. He's wearing red. Doc, welcome to the show. I thought you came for peace, but this is your red.
Thank you. I'm for peace.
You are for peace, but when you speak, they are for war.
Yes.
I see. Congratulations on World Labour Day. We give congrats to all Ghanaian workers. What is the mood like among the Ghanaian worker population on a day like this?
Unfortunately, it's a bit somber, given the general economic conditions in which workers and almost all Ghanaians find themselves. Cost of living is rising. In fact, it has risen and it continues to rise. Our incomes are stuck at the rock bottom. And making ends meet is a difficult challenge in this country these days. The salaries, the take-home pay is not taking people home. So it's a somber mood, reflective mood, where what next will happen to the Ghanaian worker.
It's interesting. I was just talking to Angel before you came. Most people don't know that you trained as a professional teacher before you did your economics, UCC, your master's, and then your PhD. So he's not happy. He's basically saying Ghanaian teachers are giving up their best. Conditions of service have not been agreed, both financial and non-financial. And basically, teachers are not in a good place. What's your comment on what Angel said before we even get into some of the general issues?
Yeah, that's a good point. I also believe that Ghanaian workers, teachers, are doing their best. And I denounced the pronouncement by Professor Stephen Adair last year that most basic school teachers are not teaching. There's no evidence to that effect. And you were talking about if they were teaching, you should be able to get their student passed. At least in the last few years, we have seen SSS pass rate going up. And you cannot attribute it to anybody else apart from the teachers.
Okay.
They are doing their best under very, very, very serious conditions. Some of them are in some of the remotest part of Ghana, teaching, and sometimes using their own resources to do a few things for their schools and also for their pupils. So the teachers, and in fact, most other workers, the nurses in Kolebu and everywhere, dealing with limited resources, are giving all their best for this country.
Okay. Let me talk to the nurses, and then I'll spend a bit more time talking about other workers generally. So Perpetual Ofori-Ampofo is the head or the president of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Also want to wish her congratulations on World Labour Day and pick some thoughts around the state of nurses and midwives in the country. So madam, thanks for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening, my dear. How are you?
I'm well. Congratulations on World Labour Day. What is the state of the Ghanaian nurse and midwife as we celebrate the day?
Thank you very much, and happy Workers' Day to you too. So, if you ask the condition of the Ghanaian nurse or midwife, I will tell you it can be better. It can be much, much better, because where we find ourselves at the moment, we are yearning. We are yearning for better remuneration, better conditions of service in terms of better equipment to work with, other logistics, and everything in between there. So our condition is not up to the level that we expect, but we are just working, continuing to work with the limited resources we have and trying to do our best for our patients and the Ghanaian population as it is. So we are keeping our fingers crossed for better working conditions in the nearest future, a place where we will see full implementation of our collective agreements and better opportunities for pensions and all that. So that is my answer to your question.
Every week we hear nurses or trained nurses asking to be employed by the government. So it looks like it's a good profession because, I mean, most young people I know, if it's not doctor or lawyer or engineer, they want to be a nurse. So we are getting a lot more people getting into the profession. and we see them pick it asking to be employed. It means that the pay is good. Is it not so?
It's not simply about the pay is good. Or let me tell you, the reality about the pay is that it is not good. But of course, they'll pick it because if you have been trained for 4 years and you qualified, let's say in 2020 or in 2021 or in 2022, you are done with your internship and you are a full qualified and licensed professional to practice, and government is not able to employ you, then that is a source of worry for any individual. And that is what we are facing, because even as we speak, we have the 2020 batch, the 2021 batch, who are done with their rotation or internship and are waiting to be employed. These are nurses and midwives who have been trained at the auxiliary level, diploma level, degree level, and they were trained in public institutions. So definitely the expectation is that government will employ them after that. So indeed, what you say is right, in the sense that more and more and more young people in Ghana want to do nursing. Every year, we see thousands of applications. And they go through the interview, and a few are chosen to go through the training. That is not to say that the salary is good, that is why they are all yearning to be nurses. But of course, there are not too many opportunities. And those who want to do the nursing, we don't have strict, standardized way of determining that these are people who have the innate passion to be nurses, or they just want to do it because of one reason or the other. They have a family member who is abroad and has promised them that once they finish, they will be taken abroad, or maybe they are doing it because their parents have asked them to do it, or some other reason. But of course, that is a huge potential for Ghana as an economy, because if we are able to restructure our training modalities for nurses, we can cash in a lot of returns for ourselves as a country, because other countries are doing it. Philippines and others are doing it. They train large numbers of nurses, and they are able to export them to the UK and other countries and earn some money for the economy. But of course, these high-income earning countries who need nurses, they want them at the degree level with add-on specialty. It's not the auxiliary training that we are doing or the diploma. Some few countries will take the diploma, but they are looking for degree nurses with add-on specialties, or if they don't have that specialty, at least at the degree level, because that is the level at which those countries will license them to practice. So that is the situation we find ourselves.
How come we have a shortage of nurses in the rural areas? For example, a few weeks ago, the Bono Regional Director of Ghana Health Service urgently appealed to the government and stakeholders to deploy unemployed nurses to alleviate the massive shortage of personnel in his region. Is it that nurses don't want to work outside Accra and Kumasi? Or is it that there are not enough facilities for them to work in outside Accra? What's the situation with distribution of nurses across the country?
Indeed, we have a situation of inequitable distribution of nurses across the country. And the first one, the inequitable distribution, is due to the fact that, yes, sometimes people refuse to go to the remotest parts of the country to practice. But indeed, if you go around, you find nurses, you find midwives, you find them in the CHIPS compounds, the underserved areas, the rural areas, and they are there practicing. But the other issue is that most of our colleagues are also emigrating from Ghana. They are going to other places of high income to go and work. Everybody is working because they want to better their lives, they want decent living, they want to be able to pay their rent, take care of their children, take care of their medical needs, and also be able to take care of their family, their elderly parents and other siblings, if they find themselves as the individual who is earning something. So indeed, our colleagues are leaving the country, and it's not just the Bono region that you mentioned, it's happening in all regions. And if you talk to any regional medical director within the Ghana Health Service, or you talk to the CHAG, or you talk to the CEOs of the teaching hospitals, they will tell you they are facing an intense situation of health professionals leaving, especially our nurses, and they are leaving because they are seeking greener pastures elsewhere. So that is what is accounting for the shortfall. And just a few of them may also leave the clinical area because they are going to school within Ghana or abroad, but that is a very small percentage. But majority are those who are leaving because they are having a problem with the kind of salary and conditions of service we have as nurses in Ghana, if you compare it to what is available in other more developed and high-income earning countries.
So what's the best way to do this? Should we deliberately train more nurses and sell them and then tax part of their income? Should we raise the bar for training nurses so the state makes more money from training nurses and then charges those countries? Or should we bond our nurses to work here for a minimum period of time because the education is subsidized? What's your policy prescription on World Labour Day to meet this demand for our nurses abroad and also make sure we don't lose enough nurses at home?
So I'll tell you this, if we want to benefit from the high youth population who want to do nursing, we need to change the level of training to degree nursing. The entry level should be degree nursing in terms of the training. And once you qualify, the state should be able to readily support you to go through some specialized training. Or we can change the model of the degree training such that by the time you are entering your 5th year, you have a certain specialization that qualifies you in that field. And once we do that, we can open the floodgates for other countries to come in and recruit our nurses. And when they recruit, what they do is that they pay some amount of money on each professional trained, and it comes to the government. What the government can do with those monies is recoup it into the training by improving the infrastructure for training, by improving the skills lab, by motivating the professionals who lecture or who teach, and build that space so that we can recoup in terms of what we have put in them as training by way of the exportation. That is what the other countries are doing. But if we want to continue training at the auxiliary level or at the diploma level, we are not going to harness this potential that we have as a country.
My final question is just to give you the chance to speak to nurses generally and also to the Ghanaian population on World Labour Day as we celebrate Ghanaian workers. What's your message to your colleague nurses and midwives and also to the citizenry?
Thank you for the opportunity. All I want to tell my colleagues, the nurses, our dear nurses and midwives who are out there, I equal to all of you. We know the challenges that we are facing to deliver care to our patients and the Ghanaian population as a whole. I want to tell you that you are doing a lot. We appreciate what you are doing. For us as leaders, we'll continue to represent you in negotiations for better collective agreements. And we want to encourage you all, continue to do it right when it comes to your patients. It is not easy, but do your best and to make our patients happy and for us to be proud of all of us. Today is Workers' Day, and we will continue to champion what we require to make our conditions better remuneration, better conditions of service. We'll continue to champion that. And I hope and pray that even as we gear up towards the December elections, we want peace in our country. We want to sustain the peace we have. Let us be measured. Let us be measured in our utterances. Let us be measured in our expectations. Let us be measured in the way we allow people to manipulate us and make us do things that is not required of us. It is our responsibility as citizens of this country to be patriotic and ensure that we put Ghana first in all things. Even as political parties and their candidates are vying for positions, that does not supersede our reason to live as Ghanaians. And without human security in Ghana, we cannot achieve anything. So it's important that we protect the peace we have and ensure that we do it right when it comes to our dear nation, Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Perpetual Ofori-Ampofo, President of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Still on the point of view, we've spoken to Angel Carbonu for NAGRAT, we've spoken to GRNMA. When we come back, we'll be speaking to the TUC, which really is the leader of organized labor, on some other issues about the welfare of the Ghanaian worker as we celebrate World Labour Day. Stay with us. Welcome back. The point of view tonight is focusing on the Ghanaian worker, congratulating all workers of Ghana, both formal and informal. A lot of time when we talk about the Ghanaian worker, we focus on only those who are employed in the formal sector. But trust me, the traders on our streets, the sellers of books, all these people are workers. So World Labour Day is for all of them. Doc, maybe let me start with that point. It seems as if a lot of times in a discussion, when we talk of World Labour Day, it's formal work, teachers, nurses, doctors, and all these guys. Does your coverage include the informal sector worker too?
It does, except that, I mean, for a very long time, the unions have concentrated on organizing formal sector workers. So until recently, beginning around the 2000s, when we decided to focus also more on the informal economy. So we now have one large union called the Union of Informal Economy Workers Association, UNIWA, that is actually organizing informal workers and trying to improve their conditions.
Amazing. Because if you look at the numbers, I think they are more than the formal workers.
Far more than. Out of about 14 million workforce that we have in this country, just about 2 million are in the formal economy. So you have an overwhelming 12 million workers that are working actively in the informal economy.
Wow.
They are cocoa farmers, and you cannot discount them. They are those selling in Mokola, those selling in Kantamanto, KGTia. You cannot discount them. They are also in the transport sector. You cannot discount them.
Wow.
So they are actually making a huge contribution to national development. Unfortunately, most of the time, the attention is not on them.
What are the major issues you think the Ghanaian worker is facing as we celebrate World Labour Day this 2024 May?
Okay. I mean, some of the issues are known to many people.
Okay.
But let me put it this way. If you're a worker, you have a job, but at the gate of your workplace, there are about 100 people who would love to have your work. It's a major challenge to you who is already inside. So the fact that you have large number of people picketing, and you just use the health nurses, it's a major challenge to the nurses who already have a job. And why is it the case? Anytime workers complain about their conditions of service, their salaries, there's this subtle attempt by employers, including government, that you are even lucky. They don't say it. Sometimes they do. Okay. So it's a major challenge, and that is one of the reasons why the TUC consistently talk about economic policy and the need for us to calibrate our economic policy, said that you don't just grow the economy, we also create employment for young people seeking to work. That's a major challenge. Okay. Then for those of us in employment, you have the issues about low pay, which is a perennial problem in Ghana. You have issues about poor conditions of service. Now workers working will have to think about pension. Would they have adequate pension in 2036, given all the news that we are having? So all that becomes part of workers' challenges. We also now have the recent challenge where workers want to form a union or join a union, and they are prevented by employers. Employers are actually abusing the rights of workers, dismissing workers who simply express their desire to form a union. So these are some of the major challenges confronting workers.
So low pay is a big one.
It's a big one.
What about the Labour Commission and how it's trying to resolve labour disputes? Have we seen dispatch? Because I think there are two institutions, the Labour Commission and the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. They were formed to help to address conditions of service and also to hasten the pace of resolving labour challenges. If you look at them over the past decade, how would you assess their performance?
I mean, it's obvious. They have not performed as we had expected, or as the law envisaged that they would have done. And the reason is not too far-fetched. They are among the weakest institutions in the public service, so poorly underfunded that they are not able to do the kind of work they are supposed to be doing. So if you have the Labour Commission, which for a very long time only has one office in Accra, now there's another, I think, in Tema, and they are trying to open one in Takrady. I mean, how can they resolve?
I don't have an office in Kumasi.
I'm not sure, but probably there was an attempt in the last few years. I'm not sure it's up and running. We can check. But just assume that they have one in Accra, one in Tema, one in Kumasi. Across the country, how would they be able to resolve all the labor dispute? But you also have 9 commissioners who sit part-time. Of course, there's a reason why they were made to sit part-time. But I think that reason is no longer tenable, and we need to resource them, need to get them permanent commissioners to be able to sit on a daily basis to address the concerns of workers. And possibly, if they cannot open an office in Tamale, they should be able to move to Tamale. But all of that requires that they are resourced to be able to do that.
What about the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission?
The Fair Wages and Salaries Commission has, in the last few years, tried. I mean, they've managed to implement the single spine pay policy. With all its challenges, they have managed. They are now working very hard to give all the public sector institutions that did not have condition of service, to give them one. The problem is that the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission is too dependent on other external institutions like the Ministry of Finance to give the mandate, and sometimes the mandate delays. But when they have even given them the mandate, and they, like the nurses said, Perpetual just said, and they have concluded a collective agreement or condition of service, implementing it also becomes a problem. And the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission itself is not in a direct position to be able to ensure that the implementation is done, because they also don't control the purse of state.
But would you say the biggest issue today is the cost of living and the economic condition, which essentially is eroding salaries? You're an economist. Elaborate a bit on that. Angel tried to use the dollar and said this dollar is now 14 and that kind of thing. Is that the best way of... How do you explain to the ordinary Ghanaian that the worker is worse off in the past 2-3 years? Okay,
so you have your salary first at the beginning of the year. You have been given some 23% salary increase. Okay, but throughout the year prices are going up. Okay, the inflation rate appears to have stabilized around 25-23, which is still above the salary levels that we were granted. It means that in real terms our salaries have gone down. If you do some analysis of the single spine pay policy, you realize that over the last 2-3 years, real incomes on the pay policy have actually decreased by about 30% because of the high levels of inflation. Okay, so that decrease means that what your salary could buy in 2020, it no longer could buy it in 2024. Okay. And we know that these inflation figures we have is only giving an indication of price movement. It's actually not the price movement itself. You understand? So there's a sense in which you find that, and people will say that you don't see the inflation, if they are coming down, you don't see it in our pocket. There's a sense in which sometimes people even dispute the inflation figures, because their sense of price movement
is even worse than what the number is saying.
Exactly. When they get to the market. And those movements, the price changes can be daily, sometimes hourly. You go and the prices have changed. Utility costs have increased by about 75%. Electricity prices have gone up by about 75% in the last year and a half, since about September 2022. All of these things are adding to the burden of the Ghanaian worker.
So the issue of the inflation and exchange rate are the two key things. There's always a question of productivity, though. I was talking to Angel about that, and I don't want to do a day, but we all know, if you look at all statistics, some countries, I was checking recently, labor productivity, Ghana is not even in the top 80 of countries in the world. Singapore, Finland, US. You know, I'm sure the TUC has to say something about that too. Right?
Let me pick on the exchange rate. The reason why Carbonu picked on the exchange rate is that we live in a country where nearly everything is imported. So some of the imported goods that were done last month at a fixed exchange, at an exchange rate that was, say, at 12, they are now beginning to price it at 14, because they will need to change the cedis they are accumulating back to dollars in order to be able to do the import. So the moment the exchange rate deteriorates, it has an impact on pricing and cost of living in this country. The productivity question, the TUC has always said something about productivity. So in actual fact, there's some evidence that, there's this thing called the Management Development and Productivity Institute. It was started, MDPI. It was started by the TUC.
Is it?
And was taken over by government at some point. The TUC has a manual on productivity and work ethics and work attitude not change. You understand? We have been doing a lot of education on productivity and the need for workers to ramp up their work effort. Okay.
Yeah.
Currently, we are doing a small project of the ILO on productivity in the share industry. Okay. Can the Ghana government or any employer come and sit here and tell us one or two things they have been doing about productivity, except to perpetually complain that the Ghanaian worker is unproductive without evidence? And you see, when you compare Africans, the countries in Africa, and I was asking Professor Stephen Ade, since he said he doesn't use the construction sector, he says that Ghanaian workers are lazy, they are less productive. If you happen to have a medical condition that requires a surgery, will he go to Togo or he will do it at Kolego? Since Togolese workers, including the medical doctors there, are more productive than the Ghanaian ones. Now, in spite of all the challenges of this country,
shouldn't we cut him some slack? He's talking, at least from what I know, most people who build will tell you that Togolese construction workers are more dutiful, diligent, and they are on time. Ghanaians give a lot of excuses. That's a general feeling. I don't know what research you used, but the response you've given to him suggests you are not even prepared for the discussion at all, because your press statement was quite scathing to him.
But also, that press statement was not just focused on what he said in that interview, but we also listed a number of things that the man has said about Ghanaian workers and Ghanaian unions. And it tells us that the man has a morbid hatred for unions and for workers.
Why? A morbid hatred?
Yes. Why?
For somebody who used to be the director of GIMPA?
Yes. And I will refer to him. His claim to fame in Ghana is what he did at GIMPA.
Yeah.
He didn't do those things with Togolese workers. When he went there were security people, Ghanaian security people, there were drivers, there were all those people there that he worked with. Okay. And the least those people expect from him is this kind of comment. You understand?
Is it not helping us to do better? We need, as the Bible says, the better are the wounds of a friend than the kisses of an enemy. So it's basically telling you, let's do better. We have the potential to do more.
I mean, we recognize that there's a challenge sometimes with the way attitude to work, for example. So we are doing something about it. Now, if you want to help, this is not the way a professor should go about it. Okay. So there's a way in which the professors can help us address some of the challenges. But they should find a nicer way and a better way, a more collaborative way of saying it. What is the purpose in the professor suggesting that TEWU representatives and student representatives on university councils should be thrown out? What is the purpose? What is the purpose?
Was it in this interview and a different interview?
It was in a different interview.
So you've been tracking him?
I mean, just Google Professor Stephen Ade's name. You will not find a single research document he has put there on Google Scholar or anything. All the things you find when you Google him is his condemnation and castigation.
So are you now challenging his professorship?
I'm not doing that. That's left for another. But of course, you know what happened to his professorship. You know it went to court and all that. But the point about productivity is that countries that you have listed as productive are recognized. But their governments do something about making their countries productive. In Singapore, when they started their productivity movement, one of the things they did for the first year, the whole year, is to raise awareness about productivity issues, just the awareness. So the nurses that are doing some things that are not right in terms of health delivery, you raise the awareness and they themselves, they become self-aware that this and that, if I do it, it detracts from the work that I'm doing. Just simply do that. But Ghana government cannot do that. I've mentioned the MDPI, the management, so poorly funded. You understand? We still do not have productivity indices. So what is the basis for anybody to say that the Ghanaian worker is not productive?
We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at worker pensions and some key concerns. There's an ILO report which has been which has raised concerns about the viability of the pension scheme as far as the state pensions manager is concerned. We'll deal with that and other matters. Stay with us. Welcome back. My guests have been leaders of organized labor. We started with Angel Carbonu, president of NAGRAT, Perpetual Ofori-Ampofo, with the GRNMA, Dr. Kwabena Otoo, director of research and policy at the TUC. So pensions are a key issue for you. What's the main concern there? Is it a recent IOLA report, or there have been issues even before this report was put out around SNIT? Are there issues on pensions generally that the organized labor wants to comment on?
Of course, there are many issues around pension, and we have been talking about them. So, for example, to start with, we started a massive pension reform somewhere in 2008, started implementing it in 2010, okay, with the sole objective, okay, there were two objectives. That one of the most important objective was that this new pension we are putting in place is intended to ensure a better retirement income security for Ghanaian workers. Now, 10, 12 years down the line, when workers started retiring under this pension in 2020, then they found out that their lump sum benefit was even lower than if they had retired under the old law. And the question, the question then is that, did we go or did we come? So we have been raising this issue. In fact,
this is lump sum benefit they get from the tier 1?
From the tier 2.
The tier 2?
Okay. So, you know, the old pension, SNIT was giving both lump sum and then the monthly pension.
Yes.
Now, tier 2 took away the lump sum.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the idea is that tier 2 will give people, workers retiring, a higher lump sum than if they had retired under the old law. It turned out that those that started retiring in 2010 now have lower lump sum compared to if they had retired under the old SNIT law. Okay. Now, the projection is that this will take us to about 2025. So 2020, 2021, 20. But some of the things coming up also even suggest that if you don't take care, the inferior lump sum under the new pension scheme will persist will persist longer than we had anticipated. And there are many reasons for that. One of them is the fact that government contributions are not being paid. And let me explain this. You see, the second tier pension, Bernard, is what we call defined
Benefits.
Contribution.
Yes.
So it is what you contributed plus interest. Now, the money you earn interest on it only when it has been invested. Meanwhile, since about June, the Ghana government has not paid that money. It means that they have not been invested.
Since June of last year?
Yes. The tier 2 pensions have not been paid. Okay. It means that the money is not available for investment. And what then it means is that if people are retiring this year, the monies they accumulated, which ought to have been invested, has not been invested. They will not earn interest on it. Okay. So that is one major issue with pension. Then you also know how SNIT is managed. Okay. Over the years. They have many investments across the country, which is not yielding the required returns. So in the ILO report, it talks about negative returns in some years and very low returns in some other years. Okay. Why is the SNIT investment not yielding the desired returns? Part of the problem is the politicization of SNIT. Who do we have managing SNIT? And what is their motivation when they manage SNIT?
But the current or the immediate outgone SNIT DG put out a statement about his achievements. If what he says is to be believed, he's improved the scheme. He's talking about the increase in the contributions, the bringing of informal sector people, the evaluation of unproductive investments and withdrawing from same. So he's spoken about some of these real estate investments that they've pulled out of. I mean, on the face of it, at least in the past 6 years, so it seems stronger than it was prior to this.
I followed the outgone, the recently fired
Dr. Ofori-Ampofo.
He's done his best. But if you look at the way he was changed and the new appointment coming, it doesn't give hope that whatever he started will be continued. The possibility for reversals are massive. And it's also then important that the unions take up the mantle to protect some of the things he has done. We should use our membership of the Senate board and the MPRA to make sure that things are done. But overall, you now have this ILO report that says, and I agree with you, that if nothing is done, given our baseline today, if nothing is done. Of course, something will be done. By 2036, reserves will be depleted. Okay. Part of the reason is that now, as we speak, SNET funding from contribution is now lesser than it pays out in benefit. And you see, this is SNET 1 is what we call defined benefit scheme. So it is the contribution of those of us working today that is used to pay those that have retired. Now, if there are not many people contributing today, it means that what you need to pay the beneficiaries, there's a shortfall, and you have to fall on your reserves. That is what is currently happening. Part of the problem is the general economic situation in which actually there seem to be more people retiring than we are recruiting into employment. Okay, so the private sector is not recruiting, so we are not adding numbers. And even
so it's not a SNIT problem, it's the structure of the economy problem, where you don't have enough new people coming in, therefore contributions are not growing as quickly, yet those who depend on the pensions are growing because they are growing older and they are living longer.
So I'm not saying that they are systemic, they are multifaceted variables that can explain what you have. There's the management of SNIT. You now have what you call World Trade Center with no occupancy. Probably there are just 2 people occupying there. These are workers' money. The rate of return on investment would definitely be negative.
Let me take a comment from Perpetual on pensions. I did not ask her. So, madam, thanks you for staying. What's your concern about the state of your pensions as nurses?
I have a contrary view when it comes to the Tier 2 pensions
and
how well the Tier 2 pensions are doing. Indeed, when you look at the Act 766 as amended, you would find that the Tier 2 pensions afforded private participation in the management of pension funds. And as at the time that the Tier 2 was due for payments to be made, initially, if you look at those who were retiring, their contribution they had made into the Tier 2 and the returns they had made was minimal. But things have improved over the years. And even at the time, the lump sum they were taking from the Tier 2 schemes was not in total. Part of it was still with SNIT. And even as we speak, part of it is still with SNIT. And that is what we call past credits. Past credits. So if you retire today, you are supposed to take your lump sum from the Tier 2 scheme and still go and take your past credits from SNIT. And we have called on government over the years that it was about time we even take on the past credits from SNIT and let the Tier 2 schemes run it, because what we are seeing in terms of the lump sums that are being paid to retirees now, it is far than what they would have received from SNIT if they had stayed on. So we have the belief, those of us who are directly involved with the management of the pensions, we are saying that it's about time SNIT revert all those monies to the Tier 2 schemes to manage. But they have consistently said that if they do that, SNIT will collapse. And I'm not surprised by the ILO reports that we are seeing now. Even as at last year, the report from the Auditor General was that a chunk of the resources of SNIT was in debt. And those that were not being recovered by SNIT. So it is our pension monies that are locked up there. And if we are hearing that in 12 years' time, SNIT will not be able to pay the monthly pensions to retirees, then that is a source of worry.
Wonderful.
And we must find solutions to them now.
Thank you so much for being on the program. I'll give you, we just have a minute to go, so just take your final comment, Doc.
So in actual fact, in 2020, more than half of those that retired received lump sum benefits that were below what they would have received if they had retired under the old SNIT law.
Okay.
We did a simple evaluation of the new pension scheme. And some of the things we found are very interesting. So for example, people retire, they go for their SNIT money the first year, the survivors. So somebody is on pension, the person dies, they go for their Tier 2, their Tier 1, but they are unable to go for their tier 2 because they are not even aware of it.
Okay.
So the point I'm making here is that even education on the SNIT scheme or the new pension scheme has been so limited.
Wonderful.
That many people don't even know about what is it that we are doing. And it's important if you are reforming, you let the beneficiaries know.
Thank you.
The reform.
We want to wish you well. Congratulations to you, to the nurses and the teachers, and indeed all workers, both formal and informal sector, for holding the country together and for moving us forward. Without workers, we will all not be here. So on behalf of City and all of us in the media, I want to say big congratulations to workers of Ghana. Muniyo, Muntuaso. Thanks for watching the show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.